Have you ever wondered about the women who survived the Great Flood? The Bible confirms their presence, but doesn't name them. Genesis 6:18 states God's words to Noah, "But with you I will establish my covenant. You shall come into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives." These brave women endured alongside their husbands through one of the most catastrophic events in biblical history. Yet their stories remain largely untold in mainstream religious discussions. We'll uncover what ancient texts tell us about one of these remarkable women, Ham's wife, the mother of African peoples. Where do we find the names of these women if not in the Bible? The Book of Jubilees provides us with fascinating details. This remarkable and extremely ancient Jewish manuscript supplements the biblical accounts with additional information, genealogies, precise dates, and specific calendars. Though not included in standard Jewish or Christian canons, it's valued by certain communities and considered canonical by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and Beta Israel Jews. Did you know there are other ancient sources that mention Ham's wife? The Syriac Targum, a translation of the Old Testament in Aramaic from between the 6th and 9th centuries, offers different perspectives. Christian writer Saint Hippolytus also preserves traditions about these women. By examining these diverse sources, we can piece together a more complete picture of Ham's wife's identity and legacy. So what was her name? According to the Book of Jubilees, Ham's wife was called Nehelatamauk, or Naeltamauk. This name appears in various transliterations due to its passage through different languages and manuscripts. However, in Christian traditions, particularly according to Saint Hippolytus, she was known as Zedkut Nabu. Why the difference? Ancient texts often preserve different oral traditions, and names frequently changed as stories were transmitted across cultures and languages. Which name is correct? Both may preserve authentic traditions from different communities who remembered this important matriarch. For simplicity, we'll primarily refer to her as Nehelatamauk, the name from the older Jubilees tradition. Have you heard the legend about Ham's wife during the flood? According to an ancient Christian tradition from the 2nd century, God instructed Noah to destroy the first person who announced the beginning of the flood. At that moment, Ham's wife was baking bread when water suddenly rushed out of the oven, destroying it. She cried out that the flood had begun, proclaiming its start to others. What happened next? Did Noah follow God's command? According to the legend, God revoked his earlier instructions so that Noah wouldn't have to destroy his own daughter-in-law, a member of his family who was about to be saved from the Great Flood. This curious tale doesn't appear in canonical scripture, but illustrates how Ham's wife was remembered in early Christian traditions as a significant figure whose life was specially preserved. Would it surprise you to learn that Ham's wife was considered a prophetess? According to the Sibylline oracles, all 3 wives of Noah's sons were prophetesses who made predictions for their generations and the nations descended from them. Nehelatamauk played a significant role in transmitting divine messages to her descendants. The Sibylline oracles also suggest that Nehelatamauk enjoyed extraordinary longevity, living for centuries. This was because she belonged to a pre-Diluvian generation, born before the Great Flood, when human lifespans could reach an impressive 900 years according to biblical accounts. What prophecies did she speak? While specific prophecies aren't detailed in our surviving texts, this tradition acknowledges her spiritual authority and importance in guiding the early post-flood civilizations that emerged from her lineage. Genesis 10 and the Book of Jubilees tell us that Nehelatamauk had 4 sons with Ham: Cush, Mizraim or Egypt, Put, and Canaan. Each of these sons became the founder of significant civilizations and peoples. Which people descended from each son? The first 3 sons, Cush, Mizraim, and Put, gave rise to various nations primarily in the African region. Cush became associated with ancient Nubia, located in what is now Sudan and parts of southern Egypt. The Cushites established one of Africa's earliest civilizations with a distinctive culture and powerful kingdoms. Mizraim gave his name to Egypt. In fact, Mizraim is used in some Bible translations as an alternate name for Egypt. The ancient Egyptians, Builders of the pyramids and creators of one of humanity's most enduring civilizations were descendants of Nellatamak through her son Mizraim. Put is associated with Libya and other parts of North Africa, though exact identifications vary in different traditions. What about Canaan? Interestingly, unlike his brothers, Canaan did not become the ancestor of African peoples. Instead, he was the progenitor of the Canaanites, also known as the ancient Phoenicians of the Middle East. These people inhabited what would become known as the Land of Canaan, areas now part of Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, and Jordan. How extensive was Nehlatamak's legacy across Africa? As the mother of Cush, Mizraim, and Put, Nehlatamak's descendants spread throughout the continent, giving rise to various cultures and civilizations. Her legacy is deeply rooted in African history, influencing traditions, languages, and connections to the land throughout generations. The ancient Nubians, often referred to simply as Cush in antiquity, preserved their connection to Cush, one of Nehlatamak's sons. In the Bible, the land of Cush is mentioned in several passages, and Cushites appear in historical and geographical contexts, especially in relation to Egypt. Beyond Nubia, ethnicities of Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia, and populations across the African continent have their roots in the lineage of Nehlatamak and Ham. Her maternal influence extends across one of the world's largest and most diverse continents. Did you know there's a connection between Nehlatamak and ancient Sumer? Through her son Cush came a notable descendant named Nimrod, described in Genesis 10:8-10 as the first to be a mighty man on earth and a mighty hunter before the Lord. Nimrod founded several cities in Mesopotamia, including Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh. This Sumerian pioneer colonized the region that would later become Babylon. Through Nimrod, a significant portion of Sumerian civilization traces its ancestry back to Cush, and thus to Nehlatamak. Additionally, other populations in that region had Semitic origins, including the Akkadians, Chaldeans, Assyrians, Syrians, and Arameans. This complex interweaving of peoples shows how Nehlatamak's legacy extended beyond Africa into the cradle of civilization in Mesopotamia. Has anyone ever told you that the curse of Canaan was related to African peoples? This misinterpretation needs to be addressed. The curse of Canaan appears in Genesis 9:20-27. After the flood, Noah planted a vineyard, became intoxicated, and was uncovered in his tent. Ham saw his father's nakedness and told his brothers, who covered Noah without looking. When Noah awoke, he cursed Ham's son Canaan and blessed Shem and Japheth. This story has nothing to do with African peoples. Why? Because Canaan was not the progenitor of African peoples, but rather of the Canaanites of the Middle East, the ancient inhabitants of the land that would later be promised to Israel. The mistaken interpretation connecting this curse to Africans is a harmful distortion that was tragically used to justify slavery and discrimination. This racist interpretation arose from unjustified connections between the curse and the legitimization of enslaving Africans. It's crucial to emphasize that this interpretation is biblically incorrect. The curse was specifically directed at Canaan, not at Ham's other sons who were the ancestors of African peoples. This clarification is essential for understanding both the biblical text and acknowledging the harmful legacies of its misinterpretation. What significance does Nehlatamak hold for us today? As a matriarch of humanity who survived the Great Flood, Nehlatamak represents resilience and new beginnings. Her role as mother to the founders of great civilizations illustrates the interconnectedness of human history. For people of African descent, Nehlatamak represents a biblical matriarch directly connected to their ancestry. Her presence in ancient texts challenges the marginalization of African peoples in some religious narratives and affirms their place in sacred history. For scholars and those interested in biblical studies, exploring figures like Nehlatamak demonstrates how extra-biblical texts can enrich our understanding of Scripture and ancient history. It reminds us that the biblical world was diverse, complex, and connected across continents and cultures. Have you considered how recovering these lesser-known biblical figures might reshape our understanding of ancient history? By exploring the stories of women like Nehla we gain a more complete picture of the biblical world and its connections to the development of human civilization. Nehla legacy stretches across continents and millennia, yet her story remains largely untold. As we've seen, she was far more than just Ham's wife. She was a prophetess, matriarch, and ancestor to great civilizations. If you enjoyed uncovering this hidden history, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below.